Ashley,
Hi.
2020 is almost over. Can you believe it?
I actually really, really can. I I'm beyond ready. I'm
I
beyond
just
ready.
find it so difficult to think that just because a change of a date on the calendar is going to somehow change everything. Like, it is supposed to be a full
Yeah.
moon tonight, so maybe, right?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, right? I don't think the clock is going to strike midnight and it's going to be 2021 and all of our problems are going to dissolve. But am I ready for this mofo of a year to be over? Yes, ma'am. Yes, I am fully ready. And I look it. I'm giving you robe and everything today because I'm tired.
I
I'm
don't know.
tired.
I'm just very careful. Like, you know what? I am grateful for the time I am here, and I am grateful to be stepping over where the money resides in 2021.
You know what? You better speak that positivity. Thank God we still have our life, our health, our
Yes.
finances, all the things. Because there are many people who do not have those things going into
Preach.
2021. So yes, ma'am, that is accurate. But I can be honest and say I am tired. I'm just a little bit tired. I'll be honest.
Sometimes what's that song? She's used to be Tyler Perry's singer. She has that one hit song, the gospel song.
Oh, Tamala Man.
Tamala Man, yes.
Tamala,
I think about
yes.
her hit song just then. Oh
Girl.
my.
There are many
But
a theme in 2020 and the struggle was real. So
with that, welcome everyone. We made it. We made it. Welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
All right, Ashley. So this week we're going to do something different because we are at the end of this year. I was going to say this wonderful year, but you know what? I'm not going to disparage the time God has blessed us on this earth, because can we talk about growth? Can we talk about growth and self-reflection of this year? Literally 2020 vision of our world, of who we are.
I mean, again, I'm appreciating your positivity. And look here, we did start a podcast. So there's that. There is absolutely that. Yeah. And it's no doubt that there have been many, many blessings within this year, thankfully, that have come. So again, no shade to 2020, but yes, there's shade for 2020 because you have rocked us, ma'am.
To our core. Literally.
Sheesh. So and y'all, and we're not speaking, we're not saying anything. I'm sure people listening are not like, no, listen, I'm over it. 2020 has been 5 years. I mean, it's been a ride.
And to that point, Ashley, we're going to go ahead and talk about, so this is typically our hot topics segment. So we're essentially talking about our favorite hot topics of 2020.
Okay.
So I'll start with the first one on my list anyway.
Okay.
Megxit. Me being a major royal watcher, courtesy of my mom. Okay, I remember her telling me as a kid, she woke up and watched Diana and Charles get married, and guess what did I do? I did the same for their children as well. And so Meghan Markle and Prince Harry left or stepped down from their senior positions in the royal family, and that was January 8th. And I'm bringing this up because that feels like 500 years ago when you think about all the things that has happened this year. But that is one of my favorite hot topics. I think one of the biggest thing for me about this hot topic was I was already impressed with Meghan Markle, with her, poise and beauty, and Prince Harry is obviously the favorite prince because he's the one with the personality. But to me, I don't like the title of it because the British press is blaming it on Meghan. I wholly believe it was Prince Harry's idea, and he finally got himself a person to, leave with, you know what I mean? He found his life partner to live his life outside of his family to do this. So, But
he is his mother's son.
Girl, 1000%. And the last thing I was going to say with Meghan is I was so impressed with her because she was like, you are not going to back me in a corner. Like, yes, I am not a blue blood. Yes, I'm American. Yes, I have all these things like being formally married and all this and the other. But the fact that she knew who she was and did not let the institution change her, break her. If she might have been, but guess what? She did not break. I was just in awe. I was like, yes, girl. And you know, I'm a huge Prince Harry and Meghan supporter, so I have downloaded their podcast. I am watching all of the things that they're going to be doing because they have this major deal with Netflix. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what they have to offer in the coming years because they've been doing a lot. They've been landing these deals. They were like, you can take the money. We don't need to be on your support.
Yeah. I mean, they are not going to have any financial hardships that I can foresee.
At all. And the fact that the people over there tried to set it up like that, I'm just like,
it was always more so the family dynamics that made me sad for everything that was happening, not the financial side. It was more so like, you know, at the end of the day, this may be in Harry's best interest, Meghan's their child's, but it is still sad to think that it's a family divided, right? That you're having to break away from your brother, your father, your grandmother. But to your point, I absolutely think that they should have done what was in their best interest. I do not feel that Harry should have to spend his whole life in this role that he was born into if that is not serving him and it's not what is going to be in his best interest in the future. Because even interviews he did leading up to it, where he was just talking about the mental health tolls and all those things, you could see the struggle, you could see it. He was talking about PTSD still with media because of Diana. I mean, like, he's a human being, you know what I mean?
Yes. And
human beings should be more and be regarded as more than the institutions in which people regard them, which in his case is the monarchy.
Yes. So, but it's interesting that you say his family, because again, being a super fan of like The Crown and all things monarchy for whatever reason, because I mean, obviously I do understand their toll on the world. But anyway, family is just a loose word though, because at the end of the day, guess what the primary focus is? It's the crown, and whoever is in line for the crown. And I'm sure, even though that was, you know, his grandmother, his brother, his father, what have you, he is what, 8th in line now, 9th in line now,
right? Yeah, because now their kids are over him. Yeah,
and he is treated as such. And so, you know, if there's no place for him, and again, back to my crown obsession real quick, the second in line always have a problem with finding their roles within the institution, because there isn't a formal role for them. They're just the spare, you know what I mean? And that's why they live it up more than anybody, because it's like, you know, they get the best.
Yeah, I'm never going to have to bear the brunt or the burden of it. Yeah. And I mean, again, to your point, right, I'm speaking from an American perspective. This is no disrespect to anybody in Britain or anybody who felt, you know, was disrespectful to the crown. That's your prerogative to feel that way. I can only speak from my perspective, which is that it did. Same. That portion just is what made me sad, just because, again, he lost his mother. These were his family members, and whether or not, you know, again, watching The Crown as well, you know, the Queen has made some decisions over the course of her time that have, you know, been challenging. You know, I still think of it from that perspective. But to your point, I think absolutely, Harry and Meghan, hats off to you for doing what was in your best interest and the best interest of your family. And I'm not worried about you at all. Good luck.
Not at all. Not at all. So go ahead. What's one of your favorite topics or cultural moments of this year?
Yeah. So I feel like now I want to go in chronological order, just because you started with something in January. So I don't want to be going all over the map. So let me hit you with Verzuz. Okay. So Verzuz, that was created in March because of the pandemic, to really, you know, help give us something to look forward to, infuse some great things into the culture. Swiss Beats and Timberland really put this together as a showcase, and it has exploded, you know, on Instagram since March, right? Every single Verzuz, I feel like, every Verzuz is just built an audience, all these things. Brandy versus Monica was absolutely my favorite thus far. I gave myself a migraine going so hard watching that on my phone. But I've just enjoyed it so thoroughly. And as somebody who loves live music, between the NPR Tiny Desk concerts, as we talked about a couple times on the pod, and Verzuz, it's just really, really giving me something to look forward to and to love. But Verzuz in particular, because I feel that it is for Black culture. Has meant so much to me. So I just, you know, that's one of my favorite cultural moments of this year.
Oh, and that means so much because, you know, even with the artists, they're able to see the impact of their music. So I'm going to give you my top 3 Verzuz. Okay. I can't necessarily give you, you know, my top like in order, but these are my top 3 for sure.
Okay.
Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight.
Okay. Legends.
The aunties. Oh, that just brought me, immediately I was thinking of macaroni and cheese and sweet potato pies. So, you know what I mean? It's like the comfort,
Patty's pies,
warmth of their voices, and you know what they, you know, they've been a presence in my life my whole life. The
fact that they still have their voices. Let's speak to the fact that these women are still able to hit some of these notes come through.
And I love how extra Patty is. She changed her shoes. Okay.
I didn't realize real quick how much I loved her as an actress until I was rewatching A Different World, and she played Dwayne Wade's mother.
Mama,
yes, like she was so entertaining. Love you, Patti LaBelle.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Fred Hammond and Kurt Franklin.
Okay.
Me being a church kid, okay, I felt seen in that moment because some of the other verses I couldn't rock with because I didn't know all the music. Because guess what? I wasn't allowed to listen to secular music when I was young. Honestly, my breadth of music, I expanded in high school. So that we're talking early 2000s, okay? But, you know, sometimes I couldn't rock with some of the 90s performers. But guess what? Fred Hammond and Kurt Franklin, who was first to log in? Me? And honestly, it was such a pivotal moment when they had that, because that was that was in June after I think Ahmaud Arbery, and I think we were dealing with
it was timely for sure. It was timely for sure for the spiritual uplifting that was needed.
Exactly. Yeah. And then my third, honestly, it's a tie between Erykah Badu and Jill Scott, because that right there was amazing and warmth for the soul. And then it was Little John and T-Pain.
Oh yeah, you told me about how much you loved
that gave me life, because that is when I was, you know, very much into quote unquote secular music at that point, and I'm like, I grew up with all of their hits. Okay,
that's probably the one. That's probably the one I definitely danced the most to. I will say that's probably the one that had me out my seat the most. Again, Brandy and Monica, I was going hard just because I was singing my little lungs out. I feel bad for all my neighbors that night, and I had to sit down the second half because I just did way too much them runs. But like I said, the fact that, again, that they created this platform, right, that has just brought so much joy to people during this time has been such an influence for me personally, and I believe to so many other people too. It's been some moments we will never forget, and I hope Verzuz lives on post-COVID and does even bigger and better things. So excited to see what they do next. But that was one of my top cultural moments of 2020. Delora, what'd you have next?
Alexander Hamilton.
Hamilton lives on.
Available on Disney Plus July 3rd. First of all, it was an early birthday present as far as I'm concerned, okay? It was like, Delora, you have been obsessed with this musical for so long, and with COVID, you are not going to be able to see it on Broadway. But guess what? We have the original cast. Can we take a moment for that?
For those like myself who had to see it without the original cast, not that they were not fantastic, but those that I did see, but I knew that I would love to see the originals because I don't see many a Broadway show. And so it means something to me to pretend as if I had that experience, you know?
Well, and then someone for me who have not had the opportunity to see it on stage and lived through it via, the soundtrack, the album.
Yeah.
To finally just put those two together was definitely a treat. So it was recorded originally June 2016, and it was marvelous. I mean, my own toddler understands Hamilton references, and I am a happy woman. Okay, the other day, in particular, okay, the other day, she wanted something, and I was like, "Wait for it," and she was like, "Wait for it," like Hamilton, and I was like, "I am raising you right." Oh my gosh.
First of all, you guys, if you were not aware, the daughter that Dolores speaking of was our very special guest on our last Jingle Jangle episode, who gave us not only a phenomenal intro that I will be honest, I teared up on because I did not hear it until I listened to the show the next day. And she is the most adorable thing in the world. So I just want to give a special thank you to Miss Amara for gracing us with her genius, because you're raising a little baby genius over there. Love her to death.
Bless you. Oh my goodness. But yeah, it was amazing. It was definitely a treat. Again, with this year being the year that it is, them making it available for everyone with the streaming service is something that I think has been definitely, the streaming services have been the real MVP during this year. Let's keep it 1,000, okay?
They have been. I would have gone nuts,
girl,
without streaming this year. Let me be completely honest about that. Yeah. So you want me to do my next one?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about two of my favorite shows from this year that we have not gotten a chance to recap on the pod. That is Little Fires Everywhere on Hulu. That dropped from March 18th to April 22nd, starring Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington. I'm about to forget your name, ma'am. Don't mind me. I have a little sangria over here. It was still to this day one of the most memorable series that I've consumed this year, and as we know, we've consumed a lot.
Yes, we did.
If you have not checked out Little Fires Everywhere, I would definitely still highly recommend it. It was such a great dynamic to see between Reese and Kerry Washington, and the racial implications of things, the challenges they faced as mothers, just all of those elements just made it such a excellent series. And I feel like they both brought their A game, not only as producers but as actresses for this series. So,
and I was really disappointed they didn't get any Emmy love this year, but it was deserved.
They were there. Listen, this is gonna roll into my next one, which got all the Emmys love, and that is Schitt's Creek, which wrapped up its 6th season run. Schitt's Creek is one of those gems of a show that came into my life unexpectedly and brought me so much joy.
So unassuming. Like, it's so Canadian, right? Like, it didn't even come, like,
I just had no idea what I was getting into. Again, you talk about streaming being the MVP. Netflix really took this and propelled it because it's a pop TV show.
Yes.
And a lot of people weren't familiar with it. And I first started watching on Netflix and just consumed all 6 seasons. The last season I did watch as it aired on Pop TV. And Dan Levy, you and the cast deserve every one of those Emmys.
Everything.
I love this show so much.
All of them.
The finale aired on the 7th of April, and I hope at some point the cast gets back together to do something. I don't care if it's another Christmas episode. I don't care if it's a film. I just need to go back to this world just a little bit longer because it is such a happy place.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Loved it.
Yes.
So those are my two top favorite shows of 2020.
All right. And my final This is a cultural moment of 2020 that I'm going to talk about today is Black is King, Beyonce's visual film, also released on Disney Plus this year, July 31st. It's the visual companion of the 2019 album, The Gift, which was a part of the live action Lion King movie. When I tell you, so am I a part of the Beehive? We've had this conversation in the past. One may say yes. Am I a fanatic? No, but do I respect the heck out of Beyonce and her work ethic?
Yes.
Hells yeah. Okay. And so I say that to say, when we heard The Gift last year, that album was on repeat for most of the year. To me, it's some of her best work. The infusion of Afrobeats and Afrobeats artists, it's so good.
It's still an album that I listen to very regularly in my car. Very regularly.
Ashley, Love Bigger, the first time I heard Bigger, I cried. I teared up because, it's almost like a prayer of, for people of themselves, but with me being a mom in that light, I just was like, yes, this is all I want to teach my child. Like, you were meant for something way bigger. Already.
Don't make me cry. Stop this. Okay. Brown Skin Girl is what got me when I watched Black is King. Brown Skin Girl, the moment with her and Kelly, like I could not take it. I'm over here like, Beyonce, stop. You're just, I don't know how you do this to me, but I can't take it. Literally shed a couple of tears.
Brown Skin Girls. The tears came in a way that I like. I knew it was an emotional song because it's a song I play to my daughter all the time, right? But to see it and to see like all the different types of brown skin girls in that video, gorgeous. Yeah. But can we talk about the banger that is Already and the dancing and the tongue sticking out? I was like, yes, B, yes.
Her and her Sasha Fierce element.
Oh, amazing. And visually
stunning.
It was, honestly, if I'm keeping it 1,000, it was overwhelming.
It was
but overstimulating. Okay,
it had such a narrative that I don't necessarily think everybody caught, because I've heard people say, oh, it was weird, it was this. I was like, it was a narrative. It was based on the film. She was telling a story. It was a journey,
absolutely, through the music,
right?
And
it's not just her putting on outfits and looking cute. I mean, she did, but
do
it's
that too.
Also a narrative that goes with the film. So if people didn't catch that, just wanted to let y'all know.
And the bop that is Find Your Way Back. I love that song. But
I mean, there's no, right? I was gonna say there's no miss for me on that album.
The only miss for me is the Scar song. What was the Scar song?
I can hear it in my head, but I love that too. I mean, I'm so serious. There's not a single song I skip. There's not a single song I skip on that album.
It's a no skip album. It's a
for sure. Album. For sure. Beyonce, you did your thing. Not that you don't always, because Beachella was everything. But you know,
I got a story with that one too.
Time. Yeah, she elevates it every time.
Every time. But the work ethic is something that I admire the most. The fact that she's so detailed with it. You could tell she has her hand in it. Before, I used to roll my eyes when they like, oh, Beyonce did this, Beyonce did that. I'm like, they love giving her credit for everything. Like, this is back in the day, right? But then when, you know, she's been on her own, you definitely see that she actually has her hand in everything. And that says a lot.
She has such a vision. She's a true, in my opinion, artist, because she has a vision for every aspect and element of her music and her shows and her production and all those things. Again, we talked previously about the elevation of certain people when it comes to their artistry. And she is definitely someone I hold in very high regard in terms of her overall artistry. The last one that I had, Delora, entanglements, honey. The entanglements of it all. July 2020, yet again, the Smiths. Who would have thought that we would have received something like this? So let's go back to this August Alsina interview
with Angela Yee.
was not expecting anything from it until this man talked about having a relationship, not only with Jada Pinkett Smith, who we all know has been happily married to Will Smith for over 2 decades.
Yes.
But that also Will Smith gave his blessing, gave his permission for this man. So there have been rumors circulating about the Smiths' marriage for years. There have been rumors that they have an open relationship, that they're swingers, that they're all these things. Normally, I would have never expected the caliber that the Smiths are in terms of Hollywood. I would never expected a response from this type of story. But because Jada,
and then where's the NDA for August?
First of all, August, I'm not gonna tell you what you should and should have not done, sir, if you felt like you needed this for your healing. But I will say you put that mess on 10 for me in 2020, because again, I would have never expected for someone to be so loose-lipped about somebody at that caliber.
Exactly.
These
and
are
actually,
the Smiths.
I was willing to actually not pay it any attention because out of respect for Will and Jada. Exactly.
So again, I think we all thought, and I still thought even, that they were not going to respond to this, but I said, well, Jada Pinkett Smith has Red Table Talk. She has established this platform of honesty, of transparency, of having hard conversations. So how could you not address this? So when Jada Pinkett, I believe, tweeted, I am bringing myself to the red table, I about lost my mind, Delora.
I'm like thinking back of that time, and I'm like screaming in my head right now because I was like, what is happening? What is going on?
It was all the juice. And as soon as that Red Table Talk dropped with Jada and Will across the table from each other, honey, I know I talked to you. I think I talked to every single person I know almost about this Red Table Talk. It was the major cultural moment of the middle of this year for me. I think and hope it seems like they've moved past that and their marriage is stronger than ever, which is great because I don't want to see.
I'm under the impression that there's no more side pieces right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe, because Will still said in that interview, I'm gonna have to get you back. Right? So I'm waiting.
That didn't sound like healing to me, though.
No, I'm waiting for Mr. Will Smith to get this get back real quick. Maybe that's why.
I think the problem with the relationship, not the problem with the relationship, the problem with this particular entanglement was the fact that he was brought into their home.
Girl.
He was Jaden's friend. Okay,
he was a baby. He was like, he was not only
younger, but he was brought under their wings to help him, and then it just seemed very predatory for her to accidentally slip on that dick. That is all I'm saying.
Oh my God. Yes. Not a lie was spoken from your lips. Yes. That was very, very interesting to hear about.
What I'm trying to say is, I'm sure Will has knocked down a couple of, chicks through the years, but it's different when you bring people into your home in the, with the premise of helping and healing, she did some healing.
She some sexual healing. That is a whole song. Let me just say though, again, this story will continue to live in infamy for me because of its unexpectedness, because of the caliber of those involved, and because it's not over yet. I don't feel
you
like
don't think so.
No, I do not feel like it's reached its full conclusion yet.
Really?
I am waiting, girl. That's why I say it. I'm waiting for something else to happen with this, because while I do think it seems like they may be in a good place in their marriage, I don't know if Will is done. I don't know if this is over. So entanglements, whole new thing that came up and was sparked in 2020. Everybody want to have entanglements coming out their mouth and on social media. Yes, cultural moment of the year.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. And I just want to throw in just honorable mentions. Obviously, the election happened, and we have our first Black, first South Asian vice president elect. Major, major, major Black girl
Very.
magic. Okay.
Kamala, Kamala.
And of course, the racial awakening in this country, or at least us willing to have more open conversations. That's something to not overlook. And then on a very lighter note, my current obsession with Bridgerton. Bridgerton has saved 2020 for me, and I just want to put that out there.
All right. Can we also just speak to, because I had it as my very last thing, was the resilience of humanity is the real MVP of 2020.
Speak on it.
We have been through a lot, guys.
A lot.
And we have spoken on them many a time at this point, from the elections to COVID to the unexpected deaths of, certain celebrities, from Kobe Bryant to Chadwick Boseman to Naya Rivera to RGB to just certain things that have happened this year, to obviously, again, as you just mentioned, the racial reckoning from Breonna Taylor to George Floyd, to just all of these things that have really challenged us as human beings in 2020. And I will just say the resilience of the human spirit has been something that I have marveled at every single day of this year. And it is something that in days that I have hard times, that's what helps to keep me going, is just hearing those stories of other people and the things that people do for one another in such hardship that I had never imagined I was going to have to live through. So thank you to every single person in the world who is doing their best to live their lives right now.
And no act is too small. Like, you can start where you are and help out so many people. I just hear about all these human interest stories of someone as simple as all they knew how to do was bake some cookies, but they were baking cookies for the people in their community, and how those small things brought smiles. So to speak to that resiliency and knowing that no act is ever too small to help out another person in this world.
You never know who you're impacting. Delora, just seeing your face today always brings a smile to my face. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, girl.
And I mean that
always
wholeheartedly, guys. I'm not joking. I love
No, and I do too. I'm learning how to take a compliment also in 2020. Just putting that out there. But yes, Ashley, I'm so happy to be doing this with you, and we already have amazing conversations, but have a scheduled conversation each week has definitely been a highlight in this year and moving on in the future.
Absolutely. Well, did you have anything else for the top of the show? Are you ready to move into our recap?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So we're about to get into our first murder mystery, and that is The Undoing on HBO. It was 6-hour-long episodes, Delora. It was released, the first episode, because it was released serially every week. First episode dropped on October 25th of this year. The finale aired on November 29th. Let me hit you guys with a quick summary. A successful therapist, wife, and mother tries to survive in the wake of a spreading and very public disaster. This series was created and written by Mr. David E. Kelley, who we have already mentioned during our microdose of Big Sky on ABC. As we talked about already, he has done shows like Ally McBeal, The Practice, to currently Big Little Lies. I mean, he's definitely a creator.
Legendary.
He's had many a thing.
Married to Michelle Pfeiffer too,
which is a fun fact I just learned recently. I had no idea. Michelle, do your thing, girl.
Yes.
It is based on the New York Times bestselling novel You Should Have Known by Jean Humph Corlitz. It was in 2014. Let's hit this cast because it is an all-star cast.
All-star.
The Nicole Kidman stars as the main character, Grace Fraser. Hugh Grant stars as her husband, Jonathan Fraser. Noah Jupe stars as Henry Fraser, who you might have seen in things like A Quiet Place, Ford versus Ferrari, and Wonder. Matilda DeAngelis is Elena Alves. This is the first American role for this Italian-born actress who's already an award-winning rising star in her home country. Donald Sutherland as Franklin Rainier, aka President Snow, because he will always be President
forever
to me.
Forever.
For Hunger Games fans, y'all know what we're talking about. We had Eden Alexander as Miguel Alves, who you might have seen in series such as 2.5 Men and Kevin Can Wait. Ishmael Cruz Cordova as Fernando Alves, who has been in series such as Ray Donovan, The Good Wife. He actually got his recognition first in Sesame Street as the voice of Mondo.
Yes.
He's recently been in The Mandalorian.
With a face like that, though. Really?
I know. As if he needs to be just the voice of a character. He recently was in The Mandalorian, and he's also going to be in the upcoming Lord of the Rings series. We have Lily Rabe, who stars as Sylvia Steinitz, who you may have seen. She's been in many a thing, but one of her most recent credits is American Horror Story.
I remember her from the show called The Whispers. It was a short-lived show on ABC, and it was also starring Milo Ventimiglia. Yeah, so that's where I first saw her.
Okay. We have one of the standout actresses or actors either in this series for me, Noma Dumezwani, who was Haley Fitzgerald. Yes, you have seen her going all the way back to our first episode of the podcast. She was in Normal People.
Yes, she was.
She's also, she was a psychiatrist. She's also been seen in Mary Poppins Returns. She is an award-winning stage performer. She's been award-winning in A Raisin in the Sun and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, playing Hermione Granger, which I found fascinating.
Yes.
And she's a Brit, so she's a fellow Brit along with Hugh Grant. Edgar Ramirez stars as Detective Joe Mendoza, who you've seen in everything from American Crime Story to The Girl on the Train to Zero Dark 30. You have Michael Devine, who is his partner, Detective Paul O'Rourke, who most recently was in shows like Limitless and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. You have Jeremy Shamos, who plays Robert Conover, and you have Sophie Grabble, who plays Catherine Stamper, who's the prosecutor. So just a couple additional honorable mentions of the cast. So let's get into some of these reviews, Delora. So Rotten Tomatoes, this has a 77% critic score, 65% audience score. I usually give you Google user likes. 90% of Google users like this show. But let me tell you something. In terms of publications reviews, this show did not get stellar reviews after all was said and done. And why? Because of the finale. As The Guardian said in their review, the Undoing series finale, a lesson in lowering expectations. As Time.com wrote, The Undoing's fatal flaw was his disrespect for its audience.
Period.
So now that we've heard some other people's opinions, as always, let's get into ours. Delora, give me your grade for The Undoing.
All right, Ashley. I did wrestle with this a little bit. But after watching it the first time and rewatching it, I did not enjoy my rewatch. And because of that, my grade is a D+.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I really was just not into this rewatch. Like, granted, the first time I saw it, I would have given it a C+.
Okay.
But with me trying to rewatch it and take notes and just get the feel for the story again, I just did not enjoy it. I was very disappointed because there were so many dead ends. Okay. And therefore I gave it a D+. How about you, Ashley?
Okay. First of all, I respect your opinion as always. And I too wrestled with my grade for this because I too, on my second watch, lowered my grade. Now I'm still giving it a C+.
Okay.
And that is based on the caliber of talent and the caliber of performances that was brought out of this particular series for me. Now, originally, I was going to give this a B minus because while the ending was upsetting and I live for an ending, again, because I was so riveted, especially for me, episode 1 is the best episode of the entire series. I watched that first one and was just so hooked. So I had to see what was going to happen. But inevitably, the disappointment that I had when all was said and done is why my C+ is going to stand for my grade for this series.
And Ashley, of course, I respect your opinion too. I'm talking for me and how I feel about it. I agree. Like, I was invested. Okay. I wanted to know who did it, how it happened.
Exactly.
And I was really engaged. I think my D+ came out of me just being so upset at all the blatant dead ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, honestly, the D+ is me taking into account the caliber of acting to an extent, because I have some things to say about that too. But the kid actors in this show, kind of like little fires everywhere, they are the MVPs as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? But yes, that's where I'm coming from.
Oh, totally understood. So we're going to go ahead and give our spoiler alert because we're about to get into the good. So give me your first impressions of this series.
Yes, rich white people and a murder mystery. Like, I love this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I love, rich people in their mess, especially
as
high
Issa
society.
Rae said, love white mess. Love it.
And, especially New Yorkers, like, it's just amazing. It's just like, I'm here for it. Nicole Kidman, yes. Hugh Grant, yes. You know what I mean?
Wardrobe, that Givenchy dress she wears in episode 1, I'm gonna need that, please. Somebody.
Nicole Kidman back to her red curly hair. Oh my God, beautiful. Yes.
Gorgeous.
I mean, I was here for it. I mean, and with it being based off a book, David Kelly, even them having a woman director, that was exciting for me. Some of her work has been, her name is Susan, is it Bird?
Byers, I believe.
Dutch filmmaker. I know her stuff from Bird Box. She did Bird Box, and then she did Sabrina with another Hunger Games alum, Jennifer Lawrence. But I was ready for it. I love a good whodunit. Obviously, in love with Big Little Lies. Again, giving me that feel, just in a different setting. So that's where I was. How about you?
Yeah, my first impressions was utter excitement because I remember HBO not really giving away a lot about what this series was going to be.
Yes,
and because I haven't read the book or anything, I didn't know what to expect. And it's so rare, I feel like, these days for me to go into something completely cold. And that really gets me excited. So I was like, oh, this is going to be so good. The caliber of talent in this is going to be amazing. And again, that first episode hooked me so quickly because I was so charmed and persuaded by this lifestyle. So for things to just unravel, I was not prepared for it. So I will say my first impressions were, again, I was excited and I was deeply invested, and that deteriorated over the course of these 6 episodes. So the way that we're going to do this recap today, guys, is I'm going to do 2 episodes at a time. So I'm going to start with episodes 1 and 2. And I'm going to give you a quick summary before Delora and I kind of hit on some of the finer points. So in episodes 1 and 2, we meet the Frasers, Grace and Jonathan, both doctors living a wealthy, well-to-do life in Upper East Side, New York. Grace is a psychologist and Jonathan is a pediatric oncologist. They have a son, Henry, who attends an elite private school, Reardon. All seems fairly well until the mother of a student at the school is found murdered and their life begins to spiral. Jonathan goes missing and over the course of the first 2 episodes becomes the prime suspect of the investigation while Grace is left to unpack his series of lies. Yes. So Delora, let's jump right in. did you fall hook, line, and sinker for the life that they were living initially? Did you sense that anything was amiss when, you know, at first it seemed like they had a great marriage? It seems like their son was well adjusted. We're seeing about their careers, all these things. Did you sense anything was off yet?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. And so that's why it was such a shocker, especially after or at the end of episode 1, where Jonathan's nowhere where he said he was going to be. Like, he's not picking up the phone. He's not at the hotel. So for me, it's like, this isn't adding up.
Agreed. I definitely fell hook, line, and sinker. I blame it on Hugh Grant, that charming man as he is. I just saw it as, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Great. It seems like everything's going to be cool. I don't know what's happening, but it seems like, you know, we're having a good time. So let's cut to this ladies fundraiser tea where we first meet Miss Elena Alves, who's a scholarship parent. She has a son named Miguel who goes to the school. She has this infant baby. And she seemingly does something that makes other ladies uncomfortable, right? She whips out a boob and she starts breastfeeding her baby at the table.
Now, I will say, Ashley, I did sense her metaphorically slapping her dick on the table with that move, by the way. Wholeheartedly. Like, the way she flipped out that boob and looked at them like, yes. And the fact that Grace didn't pick up on it at all was very interesting to me.
And my thing was, I could never tell if Grace did not also feel the way, because Sylvia calls her after this, right? And is like, I was so passive aggressive and all these things. Her boobs are beautiful, you know. Oh, she made all the comments that I think Grace also felt, but Grace was always supposed to be too, I don't know, immaculate of a human being to say out loud to a certain extent, because she's this therapist and, you know, she does not speak ill of people and all these things. So I don't know if it was that she didn't feel it or she just was not one to communicate it. But regardless, we then after that see Elena in bed with her husband, right? Or at least her partner. My first thought was, that's not her baby's father.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
you really thought that? That
child was white. Yeah. The man she was in bed with was a brown man. So
people have different shades.
But let me just say, while that is true, my first thought was, that is not that baby's father. But it sounds like
she definitely
didn't feel that way yet.
No, I didn't pick up on that either until, I wouldn't say later, but I definitely picked up on it when things started, you know, falling as they
escalating. Okay. Well, yeah, I had that immediately. I said, oh, no, man.
But I definitely sensed, problems in paradise for sure, because she just was not interested in him at all.
No, something was off. The vibe was off. So continuing on with Elena, that gym scene where Elena comes and talks to Grace butt naked. Was
like in her face, Ashley?
Butt naked.
In her face.
What did you think Elena wanted? What she was being, in my opinion, very sexual, but I could not tell if she wanted to be with Grace or if she was trying to make some type of a point.
Yes, that is where I was left. That was my impression as well. Like, you know, does she want to get with Grace for some reason? And I will say, when she had the scene at the gym, that's when I thought, I think she has something going on with her husband, because she's being way too forward with it. That was the first time I got the inkling of like, yes, something's up here, because for her to be a scholarship mom, her going to that gym, how can she afford that gym? You know what I mean? Because I'm pretty sure it's probably expensive. She's there because she got somebody paying her bills.
I have to be honest, I didn't have that thought yet. I was like, oh, y'all about to have it where her and Grace about to start having an affair? Like, I was confused. Yeah. Like, I just was so unsure, because you just never know. I was not sure whether that sexual energy was directed towards Grace, like she wanted to be with her, because it just seemed like she was taking this really unusual interest. And she told Grace in that scene, she made her feel at home. And I'm just like, I couldn't gauge it yet. So towards the end of the episode 1, we see all of these rich elite parents go to this auction, and Elena seems like she's staring at Grace, right? At least at this time, we're assuming it seems like she's staring at Grace. It's a very opulent setting, right? It's in this house that one of the most rich parents at the school has. They're starting $1,000 bidding for a glass of water. And Elena and Grace encounter each other yet again in the bathroom. Elena's crying, claiming she feels overwhelmed and lost. And Dolores, she kisses Grace on the mouth in the elevator on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
So in this moment, were you still thinking that Elena is doing something with Jonathan, or were you thinking anything else?
No, I didn't have any other thoughts at this point. I just thought, I did take Elena to be a very sexual free type of person, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of her intentions with her kissing Grace, I guess I just was thinking, well, she could very well possibly have something going on with her husband, but, you know, could it be one of those things where she's just so quote unquote obsessed that she wants a piece of his wife too, and is Grace gonna fall for this? I guess that's what I was kind of thinking, like, you know, like, where's this obsession gonna go towards? Because it was always directed towards Grace, you know?
Yeah, because, and that's an important point too, is that we are seeing this as audience, we are seeing this only really from Grace's perspective. She is the main character whose eyes we're looking through in all these moments. And so Jonathan ends up leaving this fundraiser early, supposedly over a patient. Miguel discovers his mother's body the next day, Elena's body,
tragic,
murdered in her studio, brutally murdered in her studio. But where the F is Jonathan? As you already mentioned, Jonathan is supposed to be going to some type of conference in Cleveland. He's left his phone at home. I said in my notes, I feel as frantic as Grace at the end of episode 1. I'm thinking we are good. I'm thinking everything is fine. Yes, this mom is being a little weird, but where all of a sudden has Hugh Grant gone? How did you feel at the end of episode
1? Panicked. You know, she's calling him. She realizes his phone is in the drawer. She calls the hotel. You know, she hears a woman at first, and so it's like, oh my goodness, is he cheating on me with a woman at was it Hyatt Hotel? And it was just another guy
all the hotels in Cleveland,
right? Another guy with the same name. And so, yeah, I definitely was like, okay, what's gonna happen next? So yes, I was hooked.
And as we move into episode 2, we see that again, Grace was in the same place as we were as the audience, right? Because in the chat with her father by the Donald Sutherland, Grace says that their relationship had never been better. So that's what makes his disappearance and trying to figure out his whereabouts so bizarre. But we also discover in episode 2 that Jonathan has been lying about his job for months. Grace goes to the hospital he was supposedly employed at, speaks to another doctor there, Dr. Rosenfeld, who says he knew nothing of some conference in Cleveland. And, you know, Grace is not only distraught, but it's like, what the heck is possibly going on? Because not only does he say he knows something about this conference, he alludes to some type of confidentiality that he has to keep, that he can't speak on. Delora, what the heck?
I mean, the fact that he was fired 3 months ago, and so
which she doesn't find out about until she gets brought into the police for questioning.
And so for me, that sets up Jonathan in a very bad light, because in episode 1, he's telling her, oh, I have a conference and I'm leaving early the next day. So to me, that just seems all premeditated. You know what I mean? And so, red flags for sure.
All over the play. And I think what really upset me too, again, is that it just seemed like it left Grace to be able to be so ambushed by all of these things that she had no idea of. Like, Again, she doesn't find out that he was terminated until she's brought in by the police for questioning. They tell her he was fired 3 months prior. It followed 3 disciplinary actions.
3 strikes.
There had been a full disciplinary hearing because of alleged inappropriate contact with the patient's family. And guess who that patient's family was? Elena Alves.
Girl.
Because Miguel had been his patient.
Yes.
In this moment, as a wife, first of all, Delora, would you have gone with the police to the police station? And also, would you have, like Grace did, kind of been in denial about what you're finding out? Because you just can't, you're trying to, in my mind, she was trying to reconcile the man she knows with the one she's suddenly being presented with.
Of course. I think the denial is easy to go into. You know what I mean? I think you should be concerned if someone tells you about your husband some awful things, and you're just like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? So I think their relationship was worth her reevaluating everything that she knew about him and reconciling what she's currently hearing about him as well.
Would you have gone to that police station when they came and got you? Or would you have been like, nope, sorry, I'm not following you to the police station. If you have any questions, ask me here at the house.
Well, see, I always feel like I do understand the personal advocacy of, not going with the flow, but I feel like it also makes you look guilty. So I think I would have just followed the cops to the police station.
Interesting. Because I felt like this was a moment where the divide in race and class really made a big difference. I feel like because Grace is a rich white woman, that she probably felt much more comfortable going forth in that situation and abiding by that authority. And that's something. I mean,
honestly, I was thinking about it from her perspective. Me thinking of it as a Black woman, I don't know. I can't give you an answer right now, but I was in Grace's shoes at that moment.
Yeah, I was asking you, Delora, would you have gone to the police station? That's what I was asking. But no, to your point, yes, Grace obviously makes that decision. I just was wondering in the moment, is that something that she did because, of her stature and her status? Yes, I think there are elements of that are absolutely true. That made her feel more comfortable. Regardless, obviously, she had a rude awakening when she got there. But I still feel like there were certain elements of that they could have touched on the show. They didn't, but that I thought about. So when she gets back home, she finds evidence of things, right? She finds a scarf that was Elena's and perfume in Jonathan's closet, right? So the chips are falling. Elena and Jonathan seemingly really were having an affair. Her and Henry go to stay with her father, who is incredibly wealthy, even though they never really mention how Donald Sutherland
is wealthy,
paid his money.
Yeah. But I refer to him as daddy in this, in my recap of, I'm like,
he was
daddy.
Definitely, we can call him Zaddy. He was definitely on some rich.
Big coins.
Rich. Yeah. So I also found it interesting in these first 2 episodes, the whole idea of kind of once the shit started hitting the fan, Grace's comfort is taken away pretty rapidly, right? Yes. Not only because she gets ambushed by the police, when she takes Henry to school, they ask her to no longer come, be the one dropping him off.
Crazy.
She has to go talk to her best friend Sylvia to really understand what's happening, which is that Elena's husband, who had turned himself in prior, now has an alibi. That all focus is now on Jonathan in terms of being the suspect in this. Jonathan, yet another lie, is he had hired Sylvia, Delora, as a lawyer a couple months prior, wanting her advice about the whole accusations at the hospital.
Yes.
It was just lie on top of lie. So both Sylvia and her father advise her to get out of town. Her father tells her to go to the beach house. The police are searching her beautiful New York City townhouse when she gets home. Yet another bombshell is dropped by the police in episode 2, which is that there's a paternity test for Elena's baby.
Girl.
Because her husband insists he is, as Maury says, not the father. I feel like the police were such an antagonistic force in the show in terms of their relationship with Grace.
They were trying to help at all.
They
were like, but did you know he got a baby on the side? It's just,
I mean, they just hit her with so much. Every time they spoke to her, it was one thing after another. But Grace does go take Henry to the beach house. I wrote down Henry was really trying my patience for a minute with his behavior when they got there. He was trying just for a second, because like when he came down and said, I don't want to be here. This is BS. I want to go back. Like, I understand there's a lot going on, but I'm gonna need you to have several seats, son, because whatever you're going through, compound that by 20 for what your mother is going through. You know what I mean?
But he's like, only 12, right?
He is young. That's why I say I give you a pass that you are just a child, and I know you have to deal with things as you need to deal with them. But in that moment, it was like, I may have snapped at you a little bit, son, because I'm gonna need you to have a seat.
Yeah.
I am hanging on by a thread right now. 48 hours ago, I was happily married. Now I'm finding out not only was my husband having an affair, he may have murdered this woman.
Had a baby.
We gotta flee the city, and has a whole baby. So at the very end of episode 2, Delora, Jonathan then popped up at this damn beach house, claiming his innocence, claiming Elena had become obsessed and possessed with him. He was scared, confronted her on the night of the fundraiser, but he did not kill her. But she calls the police and turns him in anyway.
I put in my notes, Jonathan's ass shows up claiming he didn't do it.
Girl. On some really, you were seeing flashes of somebody possibly being around. So when he popped up, it wasn't totally a surprise.
Yes.
But it was just like, I'm going to need you to spin a better tale than this.
You looking real guilty, sir.
You looking incredibly guilty. Like, besides you being Hugh Grant, why should I not believe you murdered this woman, right? Like, what else are you giving me? So,
Can we talk about how...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Talk about how nasty it was that his story of, I slept with her when I left, and then I slept with her, left, came back, found her dead, came home and slept with you.
Girl,
Ashley,
the disrespect.
He didn't even take a shower,
honey. The disrespect.
Disgusting.
It just makes you wonder again, what all has he been doing during this time that he has been having this affair, right? He already has a whole baby. So again, the disrespect for your family, for your wife as a parent, but it reached, definitely a point as an audience member where I was like, sir, you are a trash bag of a human being. Are you a murderer? I don't know yet, but you're definitely a trash bag. Side note, where was Jonathan initially really planning to go on this faux Cleveland trip he claimed he had?
That is the question. That is the question. I have no idea.
Seriously, was this supposed to
be That's a great question.
With Elena?
I think we should definitely get back to that point once we do the big reveal. But
Okay. So, an additional note from these first 2 episodes, how do you as audience member now feel about Elena after learning of this affair and how she was acting towards Grace? How do you feel about her? Yes, she's dead. Yes, we can see her as a victim, but at the end of the day, she was fucking this woman's husband coming up in her face.
Yes, it was definitely power move on her part, because her body was banging. I mean, let's keep it 1,000, right? It was definitely power move.
She was a beautiful woman.
And, there was a layer of obsession that I could understand Jonathan trying to explain at that moment, because after his pleading and begging, I wasn't 100% sure if, he did it or not. You know what I mean? I'm like, how would you feel if your side piece started showing up, acting real tough in front of your wife, all reckless and things? I don't know. Elena was definitely a complicated woman for sure.
She was absolutely complicated. And again, I will say that I think it took my second watch for me to further evaluate Elena and her motives, because she's so immediately cast as a murder victim that I don't feel like as an audience we spend too much time really thinking about her actions and the fact that, again, you are bold-facedly having an affair with this woman's husband. You're thanking her for her kindness. Bitch, where's your kindness?
Kissing her and everything? I can't. I cannot.
And I don't drop the B word loosely, but ma'am, let's be clear.
You knocking on that door.
Let's be 100% clear. You are being quite disrespectful. So let's move on to episodes 3 and 4. Quick summary. Jonathan is initially sent off to jail while Grace tries to reconcile with her feelings surrounding his guilt or innocence. She initially seems hesitant to help him, but after visiting him with and without Henry, she inevitably enlists her father's help to secure a top-notch lawyer, Haley Fitzgerald, and Jonathan's $2 million bail. Jonathan and Haley, his attorney.
That's a shiny coin.
Girl. Jonathan and his attorney, Haley, work on building his case for innocence, including a nationally televised interview. So let's get into these highlights. So early on in the episode, yet again, the police, as they love to be the bearers of news, inform Grace that Jonathan, girl, and I feel like the Detective Ramirez took so much pleasure in it. So Grace is informed at the top of the episode of episode 3 that Jonathan is confirmed to be Elena's baby daddy. Yet another weight that I feel like Grace has to contend with psychologically and emotionally, right? This is, yes, she has a PhD in psychology and she's a psychologist, but this is a lot of things for one person to have to deal with within a very short period of time.
It is like drinking water from a freaking fire hydrant. Like, I wouldn't blame anyone who would be able to cope.
I marveled, honestly, at the character's ability to kind of hold it together to a certain extent. Yes, she is inevitably going to end up fainting, which obviously was a sign of everything that she was going through.
Yes.
But the ability of that character to hold it together, because I was thinking the whole time, like, I would have lost it a couple of times at least, right? Like, there would have been cracks in my facade.
Definitely outburst of like either anger and or sadness.
Yes. Yes. It was too much for one person to
redirected to someone who probably didn't deserve it, unfortunately. But you know, the Lord is still working on me. So, you know.
Isn't he working on us all, honey? On us all. So also revealed in episode 3 is that it seems like the murder weapon is Elena's sculpting hammer. She was an artist.
Yes.
So per this news story, we find out there's this missing murder weapon. Red herring, guys. It's going to come back. So Jonathan and Grace's finances I found to be fascinating in these couple episodes too.
Girl, yes.
It's mentioned by her father and her that he drained their, it seems like, joint account at some point in time when he was going through what he was going through. But Grace tells her dad, like, listen, I'm fine. But she doesn't imagine he must have much money because he hasn't been working. So he has a public defender initially. Delora, did you get the sense that she is keeping their finances separate intentionally in their marriage?
Well, I think what was interesting, that's an excellent question, Ashley, and I'm going to go answer it in a different direction. I was really surprised by the fact that, okay, both extremely professional people in occupations that render lots of money, and yet her father was the one that paid for their son's education. I thought that was odd.
Which we have to get back to, because there's a moment that causes me confusion about that aspect, but we'll get back to it in just a few minutes.
And then, you know, speaking of money, we do find out that Jonathan asked for money from Daddy Warbucks. A pretty penny too. And so I guess I didn't gather that detail of him draining the account. I did gather, though, him taking out large amounts of money and her having no idea or any visibility to it. You know what I mean?
Well, she actually says, he drained our account a bit. She says that to her father when he's asking, like, how are you? So again, it gave me the assumption of like, yeah, we may have some type of like joint checking account, but I keep my ish a little over here because I have my inheritance to worry about.
His money is our money and my money is
my money is my money. And again, in that aspect, because we've seen other scenarios and other series where women have been completely blindsided financially by decisions that their partner has made, I'm not mad at Grace if she kept her money over here to the side.
But we're talking about, she is a child of wealthy people, so you know they handle money much differently. We don't need one big pot. Why?
Honey,
why?
Filthy rich. Again, they ain't just they don't give me the impression that they're new money rich. They give me the impression of severe generational wealth that has been passed down.
There were antiquities in that house.
Honey.
Yeah, no. Okay, they were hurting. She wasn't hurting for nothing.
So I definitely want to get back to the him asking the dad for money in just a second. But speaking of the original lawyer that Jonathan had, that initial lawyer meets with Grace, and he tells her that while her husband seems like, the badger, that he seems like a bit of a dick, but not a killer. He calls what Grace is likely suffering from to be PTB, post-traumatic betrayal. In this moment, I felt like it was a pivotal moment. That's why I wrote it down, because I feel like it was the first time Grace is getting someone outside of herself questioning Jonathan's guilt.
Because and outside her orbit, because this is outside her friend Sylvia as well. Because
her father seems adamant that he did this thing.
Period.
And she herself is questioning whether he did this thing, but she's like, well, listen, hold on, wait a second. His own lawyer is saying, maybe not. Maybe he did not do this thing. So I feel like it was just pivotal, because you see Grace in these episodes wrestling with, am I going to support this man? Am I going to stand by this man? Or am I not? So and my question, go ahead.
Yeah, you could just tell that she felt so uneasy, and she didn't know where to land on any of it.
She said during that conversation, like, I can't vouch for his innocence, right? Because that was really what his lawyer was coming to ask her. Like, would you be kind of a character witness for him? And at that point, she said no. But it seems like the turning point for her in multiple points in this series is her son. So my question for you is, if it were not for Henry, would she have ever even gone to see Jonathan in jail even that first time? Because she mentioned her father feeling like she owed it to Henry to go and to try to, I guess, reconcile with the idea that maybe his father did not do this thing. Remember when she visited him, she couldn't even look at him at first.
No, not at all.
So what do you think, Delora, as a mom, and that unconditional love you have for your children, do you feel like if that were not the case, that she would have moved on with her life and said, listen, I don't know whether you did it or not, but I'm not here for you?
I don't, I do believe she probably would not have taken the time to see him. I think, especially not after all the news was hitting her so hard and so fast. I feel like eventually she would have made her way to see him just to get some closure. But I do think the son played a major role in her even holding on as long as she did in this series.
She wouldn't have been a stand by your man if it was not necessarily for the ties.
Because she didn't necessarily come off as the most devoted in terms of the emotional side of things. Obviously, through her actions, which are the things that matter, she was there for him, tapping into her resources and, making sure he had the best to fight this case. But she wasn't really, emotionally, she was just not there. And I think because of that, she was also a potential suspect as well in how she handled it from an emotional standpoint, as a viewer.
Grace says in these two episodes, at one point, she tells Jonathan, my mind is stronger than my heart. And you know that about me. And I feel like that was such a pivotal thing for for an understanding of that character. Again, because she's a psychologist. She evaluates things clinically. So yes, while at this point in time, the waters are muddier because obviously she has an emotional investment. This is her family. This is her husband. This is her child. I agree that I think because of her profession and because of the type of person she was supposed to be, I think that if it were not for Henry, she would have definitely taken a more clinical approach to the situation. She would have evaluated it a little differently, and her emotions would not have clouded her judgment to the same extent. So I agree with you. Also in this episode, Grace goes back and meets with Dr. Rosenfeld yet again. He also believes Jonathan did this, but he gives more context to Jonathan and Elena, right? We find out that Jonathan and Elena's affair wasn't even discreet.
Nope.
In the hospital. Everybody knew, it sounded like. So he says, and I quote, Jonathan cultivated people being obsessed with him. He fed on it in a narcissistic way. He calls Jonathan a psychopath.
Yes.
But it seems like in this moment, Grace is back to defense mode. She's trying to kind of defend Jonathan's character in this conversation. So again, we're starting to see more of a shift mentally for her to go back to where she was when she was in the police station. Like, this is my husband. This can't be how my husband is. You know, going back to that level of denial. And in conversation with her father, she mentioned she's open to the idea of Jonathan's innocence, not getting back together, but of his innocence. And this is where I want to go back to, Delora, where you mentioned that her father drops the bomb that Jonathan had asked for money, and not just any money. He asked for $500,000.
That's a lot of money.
And he claimed that he asked for it because Grace was worried about paying for Reardon. So my question to you is, if her father was already paying for her son's school, why would this excuse have worked on her father? Because, sir, if you're already paying for school, why would I have been worried about paying for my son's education?
Well, I mean, in that performance, he told Grace that he told Jonathan that he was just honored that, he would even ask him to help. Like, he felt honored that he could be a resource for Grace's family. And so, I don't know. I just thought that said a lot to me about his character, and it also shed light on Grace's character as well. She obviously comes from a lot, but she doesn't tap into those resources. She's obviously extremely independent. And so, I think as her father, because they obviously have a good relationship, he just probably wanted to help in any way he could. And he trusted her husband because that was her husband,
Yeah, would not think necessarily that was a
ill-intentioned
subsequent lie that he would be telling for any nefarious reason, right? Even though, as we find out, he hates Jonathan, right? Like, her father despises this man.
Day one.
It's really only because of his love for his daughter and the fact that she never asked for help, as you mentioned, that he's willing to. But again, I was just like, I'm confused as to why this worked. Again, it must just be blind trust and faith in his intentions that the father was like, listen, okay, I'm going to go ahead. And it obviously, I doubt $500,000 to him is substantial.
Not at all.
But for us,
not at all.
Hearing that figure,
I'm
is
set for
substantial.
Life. I'm just joking.
I'm gonna do some things for $500,000. That's all I will say.
It work.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm gonna do some things for $500,000 and for $500,000. Listen, I'm done. Okay,
you do some things with 100,000, let alone 5.
Listen. So the scene where when Grace inevitably brings Henry to jail, because that's what her husband, that's what Jonathan's asking for. I feel like this is Noah as Henry goes straight for the jugular for his father. He asks him all of those hard questions. Do you not love mom anymore? Why did you run? All those things that as an audience member, we have not necessarily heard the answers to yet, right? He's claiming, I ran because I was scared and selfish. I knew how it looked. Came back because I wanted my family back. were you convinced in this moment of this man's desires and reasons behind why he disappeared, Delora?
So for the sake of being, a viewer of this murder mystery, he definitely looked really, really guilty, right? However, there was always seeds of doubt. So for me, and he's terribly convincing too, like
Hugh
he's
Grant
pleading.
is charming.
He is pleading and he is just giving it. He's giving it. Okay. He's serving it up on a platter. And, at this point, Grace could be a suspect. At this point, I never leaned on Fernando being a suspect, although I'd like to mention that I did not appreciate how they kind of demonized him or made him look, quote unquote, scary. You know what I mean?
Like, Elena's husband is who we're talking about, folks.
Yes,
Elena's husband.
With him being a man of color and everything like that, it just didn't feel okay to me. You know what I mean?
I can absolutely see that. I think the point they were supposed to be making is that because these crimes usually are seemingly come down to the husband, everybody assumes it's the husband. They could frame it that way, but absolutely, especially in the year 2020, I don't want to see a brown man, created to be a monstrous villainous character, and that this because this rich white man is who he is and he's charming and all these things, he's less than that. He is
less likely.
He is completely innocent until somehow we inevitably absolutely prove he's guilty, right?
Exactly.
That is a great dynamic to bring up, because again, I feel like this show did not delve enough into race, and it's not that everything is about race, but certainly a lot of the elements in this show could be construed as racial.
Absolutely. And social economic, right?
Absolutely.
And money and access.
Absolutely. So whether or not we as an audience, everybody in the audience believed in his innocence, certainly it seems like Grace was convinced enough to move forward with trying to help him in certain ways, right? We see her go to her father to ask for him to arrange a meeting for her with Haley Fitzgerald, who ultimately agrees to be Jonathan's lawyer. Jonathan gets into this jail fight, which was kind of weird because I was just like, I feel like you guys are trying to make it seem like maybe he's having a little bit of a hard time that you put this scene into the show. Otherwise, it really served no purpose.
It didn't.
It seemed like Haley Fitzgerald was about to be A1, though. That whole line about people hired me to create muck. I was like, oh, this woman is not about to play.
No, I really enjoyed her character, by the way, because
she was excellent.
Her one-liners and she
kept saying like, I'm not funny, right? Because everybody kept thinking she was joking. She was like, I don't make jokes. I'm not funny.
Make jokes. I'm not funny, because she's like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I just loved how she knew how to play the game. Like, she just was obviously the best, right? And she is ride or die, because she's like, we're gonna make this happen one way or another, because at the end of the day, my name is on the line, okay?
And we hear it multiple times that like she's the best lawyer, she's the best defense lawyer that money can buy, right?
Yes.
So from that perspective,
Daddy
as an audience
told them
member,
about her. She must know something.
The wealthiest person on the whole show hired this woman, right? So she's not gonna play any games. So it reinforced your belief that whatever her strategy was, whatever she felt needed to be done, as an audience member, I felt confident that's the direction we were supposed to be going, right? For his sake, if you so believed in Jonathan, that is. So some additional points in these two episodes were just, Fernando Alves ends up following Grace, asked to speak to her. It was kind of an interesting exchange. I don't know how much it really propelled the narrative forward.
It didn't, but it played into the woe is me victim of Grace, and then Fernando being this aggressive man of color when your husband is the leading suspect of killing my wife.
And if nothing else was, we're both victims and our spouses were having an affair. So maybe I just want to talk to you from that perspective as well.
And how threatening is this man when he's holding this child in his hand? That's not even his. That's not even his baby. And he's taking good care of that baby. That was heartbreaking to me.
The scene later, we're going to get to it where he says, it's hard for me to love her. Like, I felt that so deeply.
Yes.
So you were already mentioning that Grace could be seen as a suspect. The police actually allude to that because we end up seeing that Grace herself appeared on an active camera a block away from where Elena was murdered. I have down WTF. That was the end of episode 3, right? It's like us wondering now, did Grace go into some type of, sleepwalking state and not realize she had something to do with this? But
my theory at this point was there some type of double team killing action? Like, did Grace and Jonathan come together to get rid of the girl? Because, she became a threat when she started getting in Grace's face. Like,
many theories. This
is what's going on in my mind during this time.
Yeah, I literally had no idea. I'm like, the plot thickens. Is I think the only thing that was in my mind, like, what is happening? At the beginning of episode 4, Grace is ruled out quickly as a suspect, though, because Haley tells her, like, listen, you've been captured on camera after the murder, so they ruled you out as a suspect, essentially. When Jonathan ends up meeting with his lawyer, he mentions there was another one-off indiscretion, but also a big bombshell is that he's been estranged from his family since he went away for college, right? That was something we did. So we're learning more about Jonathan in episode 4 than we did previously. Why do you think why do you think Grace went back to meet with Jonathan's first lawyer after Haley steps in? I have in my notes, was she desiring confirmation bias in this moment? Because she goes back to meet with the Badger, I feel like just to hear yet again reasons why he feels like Jonathan could be innocent.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think she just wanted someone to just tell her what she wanted to hear, frankly. Because at this point, Haley doesn't care if you're guilty or not either. The Badger was that way too, but, Haley was not going to give her opinion on that. Her job again was to create muck. And so honestly it did feel kind of unnecessary, but obviously she just needed that somebody to have that ray of hope that Jonathan could very well be innocent of this horrid crime.
Right. Because inevitably, Grace asked for her father to put up Jonathan's bail, as we mentioned before. So he gets out. Henry accidentally bumps into Miguel Alves at school and is subsequently asked into the principal's office, Delora, and is suddenly asked if he should be homeschooled until the case is over.
Crazy.
We see Donald Sutherland get to flex a little muscle coming into the school, talking a little bit of trash to make sure that Henry is able to stay at school. Again, we also learned that Donald Sutherland never liked Jonathan from the moment he first met him. And a couple other nuggets for this episode is that Elena did a portrait of Grace and called her multiple times before she died. Yet another thing the police revealed to Grace, because they love to shock and awe.
Yes.
When Jonathan is let out of jail, we hear in one of the newscasts Henry is listening to the first, like I said, there are moments in here that I felt like racially could have been discussed, but we hear a newscaster say that this was absolutely white privilege, that Jonathan was allowed to be released on bail.
Yeah.
The lady says this was a brutal murder. It is obscene. If this were a black man, he would have never been released.
$2 million though.
$2 million.
$2 million bill.
Affordable for the life that he and his wife and her family were living. So it was not outside of his reach the way that it would be for other people.
Very true. Oh, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and this is kind of piggybacking off of our conversation from Euphoria. I started doubting Grace's perspective on things. Like, I didn't find her to be a reliable narrator for the things that happened in this, in this story.
That is valid. That is absolutely valid, right? Not only do we have her bias towards her husband, but we also, it seems like there's always these moments where we question not her sanity, but her recollection of the reality of the events that have transpired. They keep doing all these flashes and these cut-ins and all these things. It's like,
and it's
that's
like,
so
did
valid.
This happen? Did this not happen?
It's so valid. That's a very valid point. As an audience member, I fully agree with you. Jonathan ends up showing up at the Alves's apartment. I have in quotes, the audacity.
Girl.
Fernando is better than me. He allows Jonathan to feed the baby.
First of all, he allowed Jonathan to enter the apartment.
Point blank period, right? Point blank period. But even more than that, he says daddy's home, allows him to hold the baby, Jonathan admits he's met and held the child before. And that's when Fernando says it is difficult to love her. What must Miguel, who is sitting there, be thinking?
Ashley, like I said in the beginning of this recap, the kid actors in this show were the MVPs for me, because little Miguel played that role. Even though it was a hard role, he played that role so well. And it's like, I can't imagine all the emotions going on in his head, because again, back to what that one doctor colleague said, the hero worship of it all, right? You let him in your house because he quote unquote saved you, right? I feel like some of that had definitely happened with the husband too, because there's no way man to man he would have allowed any of that to have happened,
right?
And I mean, I don't know, that again, also speaking to the kids of this story, they all need help, because I don't know how well Henry has taken everything pretty well, but to me, Grace is not really there for him, right? The fact that he is watching all the news coverage and things like that couldn't possibly be healthy for him. You know what I mean?
That speaks so much to the era we're in, though, in my mind, in terms of how much can you protect your children when they have information at their fingertips? You know what I mean?
Excellent point.
We're in this era of technology, it would be really hard to completely shield him from it. Was he obsessed? Yes.
And so back to little Miguel. I don't know. He's a good boy though, because his daddy said, go in your room, put on your headphones. And he did that knowing good and well, like, I'm sure he was terrified.
And confused and all the things.
Yes.
All the things. Like, and we have not really talked about the trauma that he experienced, just point blank period, to have been the one to discover his mother,
to find his mother in that way,
brutally murdered, like
unrecognizable.
For anyone who's listening to have not seen the show, her face and skull was bashed in. It looked like as if someone had ran over something in the road. Like it looked like it had tire tread on what was supposed to be her face. It was horrific. So to imagine him seeing that, like, my heart went out to Miguel so much in this show. And yet again, he kind of terrified me because he didn't talk enough. And whenever kids are in things, they don't talk that much, they scare me.
Yeah, but he, again, the acting, it was all on his face.
Yeah,
the confusion, being frightened.
Yeah. Like I could have seen you playing the kid on Sixth Sense. Like, you're gonna scare me a little bit.
Yeah,
just a little bit. But no, you're right. He did do a fantastic job. So 2 other points I just want to highlight before we move into 5 and 6. Going back to Grace's father. So the conversation with him telling her again that he hated Jonathan from day one was because Grace brings up that her ideal of a marriage was her mother and father. And what was unbeknownst to her and what shed so much light again on Grace's mentality is that her father tells her our marriage was merely a facade. He was constantly unfaithful in his marriage to her mother, which is why he hated Jonathan. He said, he reminded me of me.
Yep. Day one.
And so I feel like this moment just really propelled Grace to continue to question her faith in everything that she thought she believed in, right? Everything around her is crumbling.
That means her foundation itself has broken.
Exactly.
You know, it's one thing to have her marriage be shaken up, but if you go further down to the base of her whole development, her whole life as she knew it, that's earth shattering.
Absolutely. Grace, the things that Grace went through emotionally was too much for me to bear at certain points in time. I am glad that she was a psychologist. I will say that, because
she did have an outburst, though. I just remembered she did have an outburst
with her
when
father.
They made it to two. She had two. The first was when they made it to the beach house, and she was in the room, and she just threw her the blankets and the pillows or something.
Woo! She went ham for 2 seconds.
And then the second is when they were playing chess, and she just wiped all the pieces on the ground
and claimed, "How weak do you think I am?" But it still wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, for the catastrophe that her life is turning into, I would expect a spectacular meltdown at some point in time. It would be completely justified. The last point of episodes 3 and 4 was that national interview with Connie Chung that Jonathan and Haley Fitzgerald did to try to spin Jonathan's own narrative. You know, Jonathan claims in this interview he lost someone he loves. And also at the very end claims he has an idea of who killed her. I put in my notes, this scene was the first real crack for me as an audience member in Hugh Grant's performance, because his emotion felt so odd and felt so forced. How did you feel at the end of episode 4?
Me, at the end of the episode, I think he had already cracked for me at that point, because for me, going on national television to do that interview kind of screams being guilty in a way. Because you obviously need to change the public opinion about you. And so
it was Haley's advice, though. It was Haley's advice. It is.
But to me, to do it in the way they did it just seemed a bit guilty to me, frankly. And I was more put off by the fact that he was declaring his love for this woman, and his wife is sitting there watching it. His son is sitting there watching it. Daddy is sitting there watching it after.
Fernando was sitting there watching it. Cringe.
And again, everything's about money, but this man just spent $2 million to get you out of jail, and you go on national television to declare your love for your mistress. Okay. Really?
This was point 1 of 2 for me, where I'm like, either Hugh Grant is doing a terrible job in his emotional scenes, or he is a stone cold killer. And when we get to the end, obviously we'll see how that plays out. But it was this was absolutely the first crack for me that said, oh no, something is off. Your behavior is off. So let's move on to episodes 5 and 6 and get to our grand finale of The Undoing. So quick summary: Jonathan's trial for Elena Alves's murder begins and appears to actually be winnable for the defense for a little period of time, Delora, until Grace takes the stand at the last minute and intentionally unearths family secrets. Jonathan spirals over the edge and on a harrowing drive with Henry, just as the audience is finally shown the true events of Elena's murder. It was indeed Jonathan. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of these last 2 episodes. Jonathan has the audacity in episode 5.
The name of the show should have been Audacity, because I have a lot of those links in my notes.
The audacity, right? Jonathan has the audacity to ask Grace if she was following him the night of Elena's murder. Was he trying to sow doubt in Grace, in us as an audience? What was his point?
At this, I feel like everything we're going to talk about at this point is just him. I picture him being Dave Chappelle sitting at the table, and then throwing the water and then running out the room. If you're familiar with that scene from the great Dave Chappelle show, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because he is just throwing anything at the wall and praying that it sticks.
Everything, literally. And we'll get to that a little deeper into these episodes too. So, to something that disturbed me, because I don't know how real this may be, is Haley talked about when they were looking at the jury members that they could piggyback on the algorithms of Amazon and Google,
yes,
to get info
Facebook.
on jurors. I put in my notes, disturbing. They were buying targeted pro-defense media news feeds aimed at these people's social media accounts. And Haley says it's gray enough for us to get away with. Please help me understand, any defense lawyers out here, if this is valid and this is real, that is terrifying to me.
I recently heard a discussion that said, whenever you sign up for something that's quote unquote free, you're the product.
Yeah. I believe that was on the social, what was it? The social.
I know.
It's not the social network, but the
experiment.
Maybe it's the experiment. It's on Netflix. It's a documentary on Netflix. We're talking about the social something. You guys know what we're talking about if you've seen it, where they're talking about the ramifications of social media. And yes, that quote is very, very scary. And that scene was scary to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they're also talking about the fact that they need to offer up another suspect. And it seems like suspect number one is going to be Fernando Alves.
Yes.
Grace had been doing a good job at this point of, wow, it seemed like she was going to stand by her man. She was not going to get back involved with him. But that all comes to an end when Jonathan picks up the phone and lays on that charm and calls Grace. It on thick. Calls Grace, talking about back in the good old days. Despite everything that has occurred, she went back to their home.
She sure did.
And spent the night with this man.
I'm like, is his manipulation that great? Like, I cannot imagine after everything that has
to be, G. Has to be. Because I get it that you love this man. This is your husband. But you're telling me after you found out that he was having a blatant affair with another woman, you find out that
she was murdered.
That he slept with you right after he slept with her.
No shower.
Possibly more than once, obviously.
That he has a whole baby.
He has a whole baby. He let y'all lives. He is the reason why your lives have spun out of control, Grace. He's the reason. And you telling me
your behind over
a little British accent and a little rehashing of history is gonna make me give up them cheeks?
I thought she was stronger than that mentally.
Going back to the little scene where she want to throw some chess pieces and claim how weak do you think I am, ma'am? I thought you were quite weak in this moment. Let me just say, Grace, I was very disappointed. Okay, you're human. But I was quite disappointed. You gave up them cheeks real easy, in my opinion. Anyway, so as we move on, Henry mentions to Grace something very hurtful for her as a mother to hear. And that's that he saw his father and Elena outside of school. And he knew something was going on. And he knew that his father saw him. But he said, Mom, I never told you because he trusted me.
Yes. That's the part that really hurt. When he was like, oh, I felt like he trusted me. Like, you're doing him a favor, right?
Oh, my goodness.
But I don't know the dynamic between, man and son, because it's much different from, daughter, father and daughter,
But you even hear, as she says many times, like, he worshipped his father. It was not even just necessarily the normal father-son relationship. He had the way that I think that he earned that hero worship from everybody, that adoration from everybody, his son also gave that to him, right? So it was just a different level of what he cultivated in people who were close to him, right? Which was this godly like figure. That's how I felt about it in that moment. And
who could do no wrong? Do no wrong?
When they went to lunch and you hear Jonathan reiterate to his son, like, hey, your mother told me, the way that Henry stared at his mother in that moment, I was
what part is this again?
This is when they go to lunch.
Yes.
Hugh Grant, aka Jonathan, tells Henry, like, so your mom told me that you saw me and Elena, and you see Henry just stare at his mother. That moment was like, it bothered me because I was like, you're looking at her like she's the one who betrayed you.
Yes, when your father was the one. Your father was the one on that one. Yeah.
Girl. And you see him really kind of run his mouth a lot and say, you know, we can be a family. Mom, did you mean what you said about we can get through anything? We can be a family after all of this. It spoke to Henry's mentality at that moment that despite everything that happened as well, right? We had just seen Grace break and go back and have a physical relationship with her husband. This is also a moment for me where you realize Henry is still Team Jonathan to the death. He is still for his father.
Even though he knows some things.
Even though he knows some things, girl. What you about to hit too? So also in this scene, pivotal, is we find out that there is a long-standing family secret that Jonathan has been harboring. So Henry has been talking about wanting a dog, and Jonathan made it seem like he was allergic. Grace finally breaks down and says, no, actually, he had a childhood dog that got out and it got killed and his family blamed him. But that was all a lie, Delora. That was a lie. The truth is, it was his little sister, Katie. He was 14. She was 4. She got out while he was making himself a sandwich. Claims he and his family never speak of it. That's why he chose the profession he did. Delora, this scene was scene number 2 for me in the crack of Jonathan's armor. That emotion he was supposed to be exhibiting about his sister's death, false. I didn't believe a second of it.
I put on my notes, no tears. There were no tears.
Did not believe. And you know what's funny is Hugh Grant is so upset that people did not feel anything in that moment. I read an article where he was like, listen, I was really shedding tears. And Jonathan in that moment was really upset. I'm like, well, sir, listen, as an audience member, it rang so false.
So false. It was like, again, at this point, you realize that there's a lot of desperation in his performances. You know what I mean? And this
was a sociopath in my mind.
Yes, exactly. Like he is just so obsessed with how people view him.
Yes.
For him to maintain this power that he is willing to do anything, again, willing to throw anything on the wall, including his wife, including I'm going to
inevitably his son.
His own son.
Inevitably his son. And we're going to get to that. Yes. So from this scene, Grace wants to speak to his mother because, again, he's been estranged from his family. So when Grace finally speaks to Jonathan's mother, she mentions it was Jonathan's decision to be estranged from the family.
Yep.
She does believe that it was Jonathan's fault, though, that Katie died, but that after she died, he suffered neither guilt nor grief. They surrounded him with family support, but she said he does not know how to suffer. He never even said he was sorry or another word about it and left as soon as he was able to never return. She essentially identifies her own son as a sociopath.
Yes.
That was a powerful scene.
Yes, it was.
And
yes, it was. But for him to be a sociopath, why did he go into pediatric oncology? That's the part where I'm kind of confused. Unless he knew about the power he could have in admiration and all that. I don't know.
I think whether or not he was actually clinically a sociopath or he had narcissistic personality disorder, which we hear Grace inevitably say she thinks he has. Either way, he was a particular personality type that lacked empathy and remorse.
Yes.
So I think those are the pivotal things, whichever direction people went in when this was all said and done, that spoke to this man's character. But going back to our questions or thoughts about, him throwing everything at the wall to try to make it stick. Episode 5 ends with Grace horrifyingly discovering that sculpting hammer in Henry's violin case, Delora.
Girl, the look on Henry's face too. The shock,
look on both of their
fear.
Faces. Oh my goodness.
It was just so intense. I was like, oh my gosh.
Goodness. That was one of the best scenes of the entire series for me. It was amazing. So we immediately picked back up on that episode 6. Henry admits he found the hammer at the beach house in the outdoor grill just after they got there when they had escaped the city when Jonathan was missing. He says he didn't tell Grace because in that moment he knew his father killed Elena. Yep. But he did not want him to get caught and knew his mother would have turned the weapon over.
Crazy, but factual.
After what we learned of Henry, it didn't surprise me, but it still horrified me because I'm a child of parents, and I love my mother, but I told my mom as we were watching this, I'm not going to help you cover up a murder like this.
Nah. No. And it's so funny. It's like, that's not my ministry. I believe in right and wrong, especially when it comes to life and death. But yes. I do have some family members I could probably call on if I needed to bury a body.
Oh, those true ride or dies. Listen. The true ride or,
I unfortunately, like Pharrell a couple of weeks ago, he was like, if the cops ask me or call me in, I'm going to talk. That is just what I'm going to do. I do not go to jail. I am not a jail person. I am not built for that.
I am not a jail person. Are there jail people? That's hilarious. No. Because we all know what you're talking about. That's hilarious. Let me say this. For me, it is not even just about the fact that his mother, that Jonathan, that he now thinks Jonathan committed this murder. It is the atrocity in which Jonathan would have committed this murder if he did, right? Which at this point, as I've already said in the summary, he did, right? Yes. Your father did not shoot a woman and feel some type of way. Your father did not hit her one time. Your father bashed this woman's head into mush. That takes a special type of monster.
Rage.
A special type of monster. So
lack of emotion.
No, sir. We're not hiding no murder weapons.
Savage.
Girl.
Killing.
So when Haley comes over and they're talking to her about this and they discovered this, Jonathan is still bullshitting and claiming, oh, Fernando must have planted the hammer because the beach house is where me and Elena would go together.
He followed us.
Claims to want to have it tested to exonerate him. And then Henry says, I ran it through the dishwasher twice. Henry. So,
and then
Grace, get your son.
Then Jonathan's asking Grace, could Henry have done it?
Could Henry have done this? That was the breaking point for Grace. That was the breaking point, right? Because we just hear Haley say that if this hammer was turned over at this point, then Henry could be arrested for obstruction of justice. So that I
have the audacity. I have that throughout the rest of it. And I think it was, again, rewatching it and just seeing the clearly guilty Jonathan plead and whine his way out of so many things.
The second time I watched it, it was chilling, right? Because then I can fully see the performance and see how he maneuvered in these situations, and it was so chilling. So again, this is the breaking point for Grace. We find out it had been 3 months since the murder. So it's been 3 months that Henry has been holding on to this weapon. And he is doing it to protect his father. You have the nerve, the audacity to take Grace aside and ask if Henry, this 12-year-old boy, would have brutally and violently murdered this woman. So
could he even swing it? Goodness gracious.
Exactly. To the point of bashing her skull in the way that it was.
Did she kick him out? Because I put in my notes, I'm like, Jonathan's blaming his son, exclamation.
No, she did. She said, I need you to leave.
Yeah.
I need you to leave right now.
Kick his behind out.
This was absolutely her breaking point. Again, Henry is the thing that she cares about most in the world. So if you threaten Henry, that is when the divide has happened. And you already, this is the final straw, right? Like if I needed one more thing to possibly believe you did this, finding the murder weapon that was supposedly at the beach house, you're telling me somehow Fernando got there and planted it? Like, sir, how stupid do you think I am? So
when would he have time to do that?
Exactly. Or the energy. Why would he anyway? So during Jonathan's testimony, when his trial's continuing on, He's asked in this one moment about his tux, and he claims he took it to the cleaners on the way to Lake George. But in the flash, we see as an audience, we see him spraying blood stains on his white shirt before it seems like he's going to wash it. That is when I immediately said, he absolutely killed this woman, right? Yeah. That was the moment as the audience member that I said, there's no way anybody else did this. But
Ashley, they had sex. He left and he came back.
No.
And he found her dead body on the floor.
So you're telling me he went and embraced his dead body, that he has blood spatter on his shirt?
Girl,
I'm gonna think not.
Again, these lies were so bad. And I bet, to your point earlier, the social economics of it all, if he wasn't a doctor, if he wasn't a wealthy man, how long would this have actually have been, this investigation?
Not that long. He would have been under the jail if he were in a lot of other circumstances or a lot of other skin colors. Let's say that. Grace inevitably asked Sylvia for a walk and a favor. We find out that favor is that Grace asked her to talk to the prosecutor, whom Sylvia knew prior to Grace's testimony. I put in my notes, it was a setup. Grace inevitably uses her testimony to bury Jonathan.
Yes, and the spousal privilege is out the window because the defense called on her.
Exactly. She set it up beautifully. Aside from Grace's testimony in the courtroom, whose testimony did you find the most compelling as an audience member, Laura?
Miguel, definitely.
Okay. I would agree.
Especially when the question of, have you seen your parents fight before? And if so, have you told anybody about it?
Yes.
And I'm not these are fictional characters, but it is not surprising that Elena and her husband had fiery fights. Like, they seem like those type of people in terms of, like, especially her being so, like, free and in all of the emotion, because obviously she's not afraid to kiss a random woman on the mouth.
Yeah.
That right there could have definitely let Jonathan go free if
it was checkmate,
if Grace hadn't taken the stand.
Absolutely. It was checkmate in my mind. Like, it caused reasonable doubt as to whether Jonathan really committed the murder. So Grace's testimony was hook, line, and sinker.
And to be fair, Haley did a great job, because there was enough evidence to prove that they didn't do enough with having more than one suspect for...
She created the muck.
She did.
For sure.
Although, one of my favorite lines Haley said, she was like, the crime scene is the shrine to your DNA. She told Jonathan that. And the way I laughed, I was like, the accuracy, right?
Yeah. Even that end scene when you see her and Jonathan realizing that they've lost, right? The case is now lost after Grace. And she says, listen, Grace was in your camp. You lost her. And you didn't get rid of the murder weapon. How stupid can you be? Yes. I mean, she's basically like, listen, I did my job to the fullest that I could possibly do it. You made the mistakes in this trial. You're the reason why you're about to lose.
Can you imagine? He is still blaming someone else. For his failings, like the lack of accountability and the audacity of it all.
He is a psycho. He is a murderer. But
the first time I saw it, I will say it was a bit anticlimactic, because I think it was all happening all at once, and it wasn't like what did she just do on the stand? And then the way that Haley talked to him, I was like, did she know? Like, you know what I mean? But I think watching it again, I was able to better understand the scene. Like, okay, this was the switch.
Yeah.
And with the Haley comment, she was like, she's always plain speaking to her clients. She's just like, I'm not funny. A matter of fact, you're the one that had the freaking weapon.
You messed this up, sir. You messed this up. And I know I gauged it the first time. The first time I watched it, that switch for the testimony of Grace hit me so hard when they brought up the situation with her mother-in-law and the conversation. I said, there is no way that the prosecutor could have known about that conversation if she had not found out from Grace.
At that point, for me, I was so caught up in, so her friend told her, and how is this legal? Because, you know, you're supposed to present all the evidence and everything beforehand. So for me, I'm going the route the first time, like, well, isn't this hearsay? Like, how is this even valid? Like, I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it was a setup, as I said, and masterfully so. I also love, when I watched it the second time, the fact that Grace never bowed down to what she had done. She stared Jonathan down, both while she was on the stand and when she got up and was walking out of the courtroom. She stared that man down. She's like, listen, you know what I did and I know what I did, and I want you to fully understand that this has happened because of me. Because
he expected too much from her. He had done her dirty, so, I mean, he had done her so wrong, Ashley.
Yeah.
And still expected her to be right there the whole time after revelation and revelation and revelation comes out.
He thought
and
that
then you
slick
blame
mouth,
your son?
Girl, he thought that slick mouth could get him out of everything. And it almost did. To be honest, it almost did. Let's get to the last sequence real quick of Jonathan, after realizing he's going to lose this case, taking Henry for a joyride in the car. This scene made me physically ill because I was so worried that he was going to kill Henry. I thought he was going to do a murder-suicide for a minute.
I actually have that in my notes too. I was really disappointed in this part, but keep going. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I also realized again how rich her daddy was, because he had a helicopter flying right next to the police helicopter. Like, sir, how rich are we? Exactly. Like,
daddy,
you on another level. Get the helicopter, get it up in the air. Don't ask me no questions.
Wait, so the part for me, so yes, I felt the same way with the murder-suicide. The part that really frustrated me during this whole scene was, after she did what she did on the stand, why wouldn't she communicate to Henry, like, all right, it's you and me now. Your dad is more likely going to go to jail. Let me know of any communication you have with him. Yeah. Like, the fact that they let him slip through their fingers like that.
Yeah. It was like, you just, I guess in her mind, even though he did this heinous crime at this point, I guess she's assuming, she just never rationalized, I guess, that he would try to take Henry or hurt Henry, which is a mistake.
He's a manipulative
Exactly.
prick.
It was a mistake.
So
it was a mistake.
Me, of course he was going to grasp for straws, because this is his last person.
Hurrah. Yeah, his last
who
hurrah.
Is going to, you know, hold him up to the esteem that he was used to. Of course he was going to reach out to Henry, at least in my mind. So for me, I was so frustrated at this part, at both Grace and of course with Jonathan, because I'm just like, oh my gosh,
what
he better not kill them.
Yeah,
you know, don't run this car off the freaking bridge.
Yeah. My last thought about the final scene where, you know, Jonathan is taken into custody and you see him looking out as Grace and her father and Henry fly off in the helicopter was, you know, did Jonathan really snap in that moment with Elena, or was he truly a sociopath? He seems convinced that it's the former, because he makes comments like, sometimes we lose ourselves, but it doesn't change who we are in our entirety. It's a separate person.
He like,
yeah.
I have that in my notes.
This isn't your father. This isn't the real me. This wasn't who I really am. As an audience member, though, it's the latter for me, right? Because he never shows remorse. He never says he's sorry. He never takes accountability for what he has done. There's no, to me, normal human being that could murder someone in such a brutal way and not have some type of personality disorder as a part of that. Not to justify it whatsoever, but I definitely feel like, as Hugh Grant says at the very, very end, when you hear the actors at the end of episode 6 speak about the series, did Jonathan really love his family, or did he love them loving him? And for me, it's he loved them loving him. That's what it always came back to, was that affirmation and that God-like, you know,
hero worship
of him as a person, because that's the person that he was.
Yeah. I wrote in my notes, they say men have this uncanny ability to compartmentalize, and he does it. He's a prime example of it with how he is describing what happened that night, or not just that describing, but we are then shown what happened that night. I just feel like and so this is the part where I wanted to go back to the beginning with him going on this quote unquote
Cleveland
business trip. Do you think he had any intentions of killing her before that moment? You don't think so?
No, I don't. I do think that it was a spur of the moment situation that happened, because even when he was bashing her head against the wall, which was horrible to watch, I don't think he was intending to kill her until she came at him with that hammer. And I think once she came at, not to justify her murder in any regard, but I think something in that moment broke, and he said, oh, this is the level you want to go to? Okay, well, if this is the level you want to go to, fine. You know what I mean? So I don't think that he had a premeditated plan to kill her. I think possibly it was that he was going to go spend time with her, do whatever it is that they've been doing all this time that they've been seeing each other. But that night, the situation took on a life of its own. But I still, again, don't think that he was the type of person that ever took a step back and said, oh my God, what have I done? I think he was like, I did what had to be done. Fuck it.
I mean, he went home and effed his wife. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say, Ashley? Because there's a couple of points I want to bring up.
No, feel free. Feel free to wrap us up. Yeah, feel free to wrap us up.
So for me, there were just holes in this story, right? So one, I did not enjoy Nicole Kidman's performance. I found her performance to be annoying and odd to me, with all the blinking and the random camera angles in her face, like, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier with her.
That may have been the Botox. That may have been the Botox, but
her being an unreliable, source when it comes to her flashbacks and things like that. It just was very odd, and just like I couldn't get with it. Because to me it didn't really explain. Yes, it explained her shock and being blindsided, but it didn't serve me. It didn't serve for anything else, and it just got annoying over time. Speaking of holes, right? What exactly is this cocksucker speech that her father was having?
Yeah, he was all bark and no bites.
And nothing happened. It went nowhere. Because guess what? Henry eventually was out of school. I don't know if we, mentioned that, but it happened, And the biggest hole for me, okay, is who was the sad fuck? Because I, at one point, was thinking Sylvia could have been that person, and she could have very well have been another mistress, and she could have killed her. But
I'm glad you brought that up.
And for her to be always that friend that Grace could go to, and I'm like, what if that's his child too? Because she seems like a single mom. I didn't really know her story very well. So for me, these were all, dead end points for me,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to address all of them. So respect your opinion on Nicole Kidman's performance, but Nicole Kidman did her thing, in my personal opinion.
I still love her as an actress, but I was just annoyed.
I get her character, in my opinion, could be annoying, but Nicole Kidman embodied that character. You know what I mean? Like, that's where, as an actress, she was
so
Grace.
Stiff. Like,
she was Grace. But I think I think the character, the way that Grace was, the way that Grace went about navigating the world, I think that was a product of who Grace was supposed to be. But that's just my opinion. Okay. And then on the Henry being out of school, I thought Henry stayed in school because he was supposed to go to school that day. That's how they realized that Henry was missing, if he didn't show up at school that day.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe he was still in school. Then the last point, I'm so glad you brought up Sylvia, because Sylvia was the one thing that I got absolutely wrong about the show. I thought Sylvia was definitely on some shady shit. Yes. Because it's always that person who's seemingly super close to you that is on some so I was a little disappointed that she ended up really being a ride or die, because I just was convinced that she was this shady person who was going to turn around and be doing something that was going to shock us all.
Again, that one other person Jonathan claimed to have slept with.
Yes. And again, this is why the reviews and the finale, as we speak of, was so disappointing for people, because I think inevitably with this series, we had as audiences so many theories, so many thoughts about what could be, what would be, who was doing this, who was doing that. And it came down to that original person, Jonathan. Yes,
it was straightforward the whole time.
Yeah, it was disappointing. So again, that's why I gave it my C+, because I am all about an ending. My favorite films are still some that have the most shocking endings, like the first Saw. Oh my God, right? Like, that was unbelievable.
Shawshank Redemption for me.
Listen, I'm all about a good ending. So that disappointed me, but great acting in my opinion.
Wait. Excellent acting. Yeah. And overall, I did enjoy it the first time around. I just feel like also us being in a post Game of Thrones world, we have gotten accustomed to the shock and awe of everything, right? It's almost like we can't handle a story being as straightforward as this story.
As that one was.
And I think that probably plays a large part in some of my disappointment in it. But I think there were some valid dead ends that were really disappointing, though, for me. And I think, again, my D+ is me rewatching it, not enjoying it, because I was a little annoyed, because I'm like, this Jonathan character is the worst character of all time. Okay? He is the worst. And he has shown, like Maya Angelou, if somebody shows you who they are
believe
the first
them
time, believe them. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just cannot deal with like how I really felt for his okie doke the first time, so
because he was Hugh Grant. That's all I will say. I think that the casting of Hugh Grant makes so much sense, because he is someone, besides some of his like later work that he's done where he's been more range in his acting, he is a very charismatic, charming man. So to have that embody this character as an audience member was like, oh, but it's Hugh Grant though, you know what I mean? You do carry a little bit of that bias into a show. But to again, the points that I had breaks in my belief that he was innocent, inevitably I was hoping for a better twist. I was hoping for a better ending.
Honestly, my suspects were obviously Jonathan. Grace was a suspect. Sylvia was a suspect. At one point, even her dad had some moments where I'm like, is he willing to cover up anything for his baby girl?
President Snow. I mean, again, he is always he's been a very sinister person in other things. So it's easy to cast him in a villainous character, even though he was not, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, and your D+, you don't have to justify it, Delora. Your D+
no,
is
I
balanced.
just want people to know. I wanted to wait till the end once the killer was revealed to go in a little bit more detail. But yeah,
I'm sure many people watched this and said, "Man, this show, how dare you take up 6 hours of my life just for you to basically give me what I could have known in episode 1." I've seen those.
One of my favorite memes was that picture of it's a white lady with blonde hair and she's looking confused, and on one side of the meme it has all of like this major equation like aerospace equations, and then they were like how I thought The Undoing was going to end and then how it really ended, and it was just a picture of the lady confused face. That tickled me so much.
Yeah, to your point, there has been so many great shows and great twists over the last, decade or so, that it is difficult to have such a simplistic finale. appreciate the effort, appreciate the artistry, appreciate
it was well
those
done.
Performances.
Yes.
I don't need a season 2. You know, we've talked about my love for continuations. This is fine for me. I'm done. So please feel free, Nicole, to take your talents on to other ventures. David, you as well. Hugh, you as well. Noma, you as well. Appreciated you. Noah, I know you're about to do a Steven Soderbergh film, so good for you. You know, and I felt The Undoing was still worthwhile to recap for sure, because it was one that people talked about a lot.
It was a
that
moment.
Was tweeted about a lot. And
absolutely.
I hope you guys have enjoyed our recap of The Undoing.
Yes. So Ashley, we're done with this episode 11.
I know.
But our final episode of 2020.
I know. Again, it's been a hell of a year. So, you know, thank you guys for rolling with us for these 11 episodes. We started 2021. Super excited for all the content drops that have already been happening.
Girl, next it's hard to keep up.
Next week, what are we recapping, ma'am? What are we recapping?
I'm so excited. Bridgerton. Shonda Rhimes. First content. Like, so before they were like documentaries, but this is like the first scripted series she has with her new relationship with Netflix. It is a period piece. It came on Christmas, and oh, what a Merry Christmas it has been. And yes, we will be recapping that next week in our new year, 2021.
Excited. Guys, have a wonderful new year. Have a wonderful time celebrating however you see fit to mark the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. We look forward to sticking with you. Please follow us on all the things at Recapping Podcast. We're also on YouTube. Check us out there if you feel so inclined. And Delora, as always, my friend, it has been the pleasure.
It has been such a wonderful pleasure. Thank you, Ashley. And thank you, everyone. And can't wait to see you in the new year.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.